Don't give up, soldiers. Hey, that was Don't Give Up by the band Man at the World. My name is Tom Dunn. Her name is Vicky Joy. We are Through the Black, and we're back again. Sixth season, hanging out, chilling like villains. What's going on, Vicky Joy?
Oh, man. Well, we're making trouble. We've taken that moniker on. So, is it Friday yet? I'm so tired, Tom.
What we've already had Friday today.
We did.
Yeah,
technically we did. Yeah.
So hey, when Friday gets here, you can skip it.
Okay, cool. I'll sleep through that show. No, I won't. No, I've had my coffee. I'm rearing to go.
Vic, speaking of coffee, this is water. Okay.
Really? Yeah, I got water.
Okay. Hey, so a lot of stuff happening in the news. We focused on one thing last night. We're going to do a little bit of a recap on that because I just want to make sure people are informed. I want to put out a bunch of stuff. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Today, February 21st, 2023. Vic, yesterday was a very special day for a couple reasons. One reason was it was my youngest son's birthday. Guess how old he is? Or not my youngest, my oldest.
Your youngest? Oh, your oldest
son.
Well, that's cheating because I know the answer.
Oh, you already know. Okay.
45.
Okay. Oh, come on. That's not funny. Oh, dude, why am I laughing? That would put me, oh man,
Ooh.
That would put me at 65. 29 years old. So it's not my birthday, but just to give people an idea of how old I am, I have a son, 29 years old. People used to say, like when I told them I had a teenage son, they're like, oh, really? You don't look like you got a teenage son. And people don't say that. Like when I tell them I have a 29-year-old son, they don't say, oh, really? You don't look like you have a 29. They don't say that anymore. So
yeah, that ship has sailed. Yeah, I know. It's a sad day when all the people that think you're way younger than you really are stop saying that.
Yeah. So we had a little birthday party at my house over the weekend, and I had a bunch of people at my house. It was a lot of fun. I don't know. There's a lot of anxiety that goes in for like at my age when you have kids that have moved out and you're just kind of anticipating, oh man, I get to see my kids. And it's just like, I'm going to hyperventilate. It's like a dog waiting to go outside, just like getting really excited. And then it happens and then it's over. And then I'll be honest with you, after it was over, I was a little bit depressed. I was like, oh, dude, it's over, Yeah. So, but I got to hang out with so much family, but it was too many people here. Like, I couldn't talk to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, of course, my daughter, my son-in-law was up, and man, they were just goofy. They're just goofy. They were acting crazy and wrestling around. My son-in-law, God bless him, that kid can put away some groceries, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dude. That's one of the things I love about him is he is not shy about. He just like comes in and helps himself. But
awesome.
So, well, I was watching my son-in-law and my daughter just like goofing around, and they were like wrestling and stuff and just doing goofy stuff. Like I have this giant beanbag in my living room, and they were just kind of like jumping on it and falling on it and stuff. And then my son-in-law was like trying to do Superman, right, with
Oh
my
no.
daughter, like put him on his feet, up in the air, put her on his feet, and it reminded me when I was younger and some of the goofy things that I did.
Oh.
So I remembered this story of when I was a young father to be, okay? My 29-year-old son, this is how long ago this was. This was about 29 years ago. It probably happened in last month, 29 years ago. So my wife at the time, again, this is a long time ago, her and I had this thing where we would want to be the first person to get the mail, okay? And we would race to the mailbox. I don't know why we did this, but we did. And at the time, my car was broke down, so we were getting a ride from a relative. And it was January in Ohio, and my wife was very, very pregnant. Okay,
Oh.
and it was bad. It was snowy. It's probably icy. So as I'm getting close to home, I'm figuring out how I'm going to beat her to the mailbox. Right? She's like, I told you the condition. Okay.
Oh no.
So when the car pulls up to drop us off, I pop out of that car and run up, like up 2 flights of stairs to the mailbox. And well, of course I won, right? So, but being a young kid, I left my pregnant wife behind, in the snow. And well, word got back to her mom,
Oh
okay,
no.
that I had done this.
Oh no.
And it didn't look good on me, but my mother-in-law, God bless her, she didn't know the competition that we had,
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a story out there. You can judge me if you want. I'm trying to just get all the skeletons out of my closet tonight and just, hey, tell the truth.
You know how you can tell that happened a long time ago? Was people were still excited to get their mail because they might actually get something other than a bill. Like, remember when people used to write each other letters? Fun stuff came in the mail. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and if anybody watched the video I made a couple weeks ago, I went to the site of that house, right? It's not there anymore, but it's a place where we used to do ministry and all that. So anyway, lots of anniversaries, Vic. My son's birthday was yesterday, but also yesterday, 7 years ago, was the day that I filmed the interview with Greg Reed for the movie Detestable.
Wow.
So, and I remember calling my son on that day, telling him happy birthday. I said, "Hey, son, I'm in California. Happy birthday. I'm making a movie." But guys, if you don't know, yeah, we made a movie 7 years ago, and it actually came out 7 years ago this summer called Detestable. You can find it at our website throughtheblack.com. I'll try to hold it up, but the green screen won't let me. See, this is the movie. If I hold it down here, if I put it up here, it disappears. So
it looks like the Beatles' White Album.
Yes. So anyway, it's a movie that we think is still, there you go, Detestable. And when you buy the movie, you get the Detestable pack, which is like I think 4 hours or more of bonus footage. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it's not 4 hours. But yeah, it's also available on Amazon.com. Greg Reed, you can see there as a little child there on the Amazon profile. You can rent it there. Yeah. His stories in the movie, we went back to where he lived. We went back to where his story took place. And that was an amazing day. We went down Hollywood Boulevard and we ate in Hollywood in California, had dinner there, met Greg Reed and spent some time with him. And wow, just I can't believe I was I mean, it was cool that I filmed it, and I made the movie, but just getting to be there with Greg Reed and how the whole thing worked out. So 7 years ago, and we believe the film is still important. People are still watching the movie. It's kind of funny. I went out with my friend Rob last week and he said, "Hey man, I just watched your movie for the first time all the way through."
Oh wow.
So Hey, thank you so much. God bless you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys. God bless you. So anyway, we don't, it was so long ago. The movie came out. We don't talk about it, but it's there. It's still there's DVDs left. I don't know how many, but there's enough, for a few months or more. But yeah, it's out there. So just wanted to mention that. But Vic, oh wow, I don't know. Where do we go from here? There's a few stories to talk about.
Yeah. Get into it. We can do you want to go with the revival stuff?
Well, yeah. There is there's something going on down in Kentucky. There is a little bit of controversy about what to call it or what it is or what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what have you heard?
So I actually heard about it from friends because I'm not usually online. My head's in the sand. I never know what's going on. But anyway, a similar thing happened in the early 90s when I was in college. I went to a Bible college in Minnesota, and it had started at Wheaton College. And so it was kind of spreading all over the Midwest. There was all these revivals going on in the colleges. It was kind of the same thing. It only lasted 2 or 3 days where I was at, and it wasn't so much like there was singing and stuff, but what it was, Tom, it was so cool. They had like a solitary microphone on a mic stand on the stage, and people were getting up and repenting, like confessing their sins. And it wasn't this trivial, stupid stuff. Like people were getting it out. And there was a line that went off the stage and down and all the way out the auditorium. And that line was for like 2 or 3 days. And, you'd stop there after a class or after lunch or whatever, and it would still be going on. And so that was something I'd kind of forgotten about until this started. And so I think because I haven't really been following it myself, but I have friends who are kind of keeping me abreast of the situation. There's a lot of people, like I did see I think it was a Facebook post of Dr. Spalding. I don't know. Did you see Mike Spalding's post?
I didn't see his, but
okay. So apparently I'm gleaning from what he said that there's a lot of people kind of bickering over the nuances of whether this should be
okay, yeah, I did
or
see
not,
that.
like semantics, you say potato, I say potato. And he said something like, Father, forgive us for praying for revival and then being upset when it doesn't look the way we expected it or wanted it to, or something like that. So yeah. I'm gathering that, as usual, there has to be all of like the naysayers out there criticizing it and critiquing it and whatnot. But a couple of the little Instagram follow-ups, because people are now who have been there are posting follow-ups, and the ones that I've seen, it looks like some of the deliverances and things that went on they're actually bearing fruit, and those people are, claiming that was a very changing moment in their life. So I don't know. I don't know enough about what's going on. I suppose I'm just guessing. Are people bickering because it's like not the right denomination, or
there's a lot of criticism. People are criticizing it for all kinds of different reasons. You name it. It could be because they're not Calvinist. I've seen
right.
that. I've seen it because they're not Torah. Okay, it's not a real revival because they're not Torah.
Okay.
They're not charismatic. It's not a real revival. You name it. Okay. Every reason that you can think of, people are criticizing this, and they don't have the right theology. Just on and on and on and on. I mean, my take on it is God is being lifted up, and when God is lifted up, people are drawn to Him, and amazing things happen. And He can do that in any place that He wants. I mean, it's just it's almost like a principle of the universe. That when we praise God, good, powerful things happen when we exalt Him. So, I've seen just I've seen this one kind of blog made about it. They're saying, well, we didn't see any repentance, we didn't see any of this, we didn't see any of that. Well, maybe it wasn't happening when you were watching it or when you were there, but I heard plenty of testimony of repentance. I heard plenty of a testimony of the gospel being preached and explained. It's enough for me to believe that it was legit. I don't know about this criticism. I'm concerned. I'm more concerned for the people that are criticizing it,
Right. This is what I think is kind of funny about it. If you're criticizing it because it's not your denomination, aren't you then admitting that your denomination is the one that needs revival? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't it be a comfort to you in your self, aggrandizing that a denomination that you think is beneath you is the one that's getting the revival? Like, wouldn't that just prove your point that your denomination? Do you know where I'm going with this? Like, if the revival is coming out of the church that you go to, then that must mean your church was dead and in need of a revival. Like, isn't that the point of a revival? Something's being revivified. So that one doesn't make sense.
I'll tell you, people might think this is controversial, but I think God could even use a false teacher to bring revival. If the people that are repenting are truly finding God, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jesus even said to the disciples, like, don't stop them from casting out the demons. And, it's all good press for us.
Right. So, I tell you what, and then maybe there's some question over the semantics. Well, this isn't a revival. This is this or this is that. I don't care what you call it. God is moving. People are repenting. People's lives are being changed. And there are people that will look at that event and say, that was the time that I changed and I haven't been the same.
Yep.
I was in IYC, International Youth Conference, YMCA the Rockies, in August of 1988. And that was the event that I haven't been the same. I went to Colorado and I came back a different person. So I dedicated my life to the Lord, and I just made a commitment. I have not been perfect since then, but I haven't turned back. You know what I'm saying? And I've let the Lord down many times, but we're still here. We're still fighting. So anyway, I think it's a good thing, and I hope there's more of it. To be honest, I hope it spreads. And even if it spreads to some places where it's like of denominations that I'm not totally interested in. I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to say it the right way. I think we all have we have our biases, you know what I'm saying? And we have our, theology that we lean towards. I don't care. Let them all have it. You know what I'm saying? Every one of them, if we're repenting, and genuinely sincere, God is going to recognize that. And it could happen anywhere. It could happen in the middle of a satanic concert, and God can do amazing things. For anybody that doesn't know, if you didn't hear the story a million times like I did, my friend Russ Dizdar, oh man, his testimony, so powerful. He was at a drug party in his own apartment, and the guy in the basement that made the drugs got saved. He came up and started preaching to everybody at the party. Russ ran out of his own apartment back to his parents' house to get away from this guy preaching the gospel. He got saved that night. His friend Rob got saved. Okay. A revival happened at a drug party.
Yeah.
Other people got saved.
Yeah.
So if God can use anything, right? And then Vic, here we are influenced by Russ. You know what I'm saying? So, and so many people, so many listeners, powerful testimonies and ongoing. So anyway, I think you guys get how we feel about that. And that's all I have to say about that.
Speaking of gregarious large groups of moralistically worldviewed people gathered in one place, did you have something we were going to say about January 6th?
Well, yeah, I tell you what, I don't really want this out there, but yeah, I was there January 6th, and I went down there to cover it, and I thought something crazy was going to happen, and I was right. January 6th, what year was that? 2021. And yeah, 2 years ago, 2 years and a month ago.
Oh, was it 2 years already? Oh,
yeah. So we went down there, and things got a little crazy. I noticed something, and you can go back and probably find these archives. Jared and I, we talked about this afterwards. I saw some things that didn't add up. I saw some people that didn't really fit in with the rest of us. They were screaming at, saying, "Come on, we got to take this building." And it was really out of place. And it really struck me even there at the event. I'm like, who are these guys? Who hired these guys? Yeah, this is the video. Fake blood on the ground. I actually shot this video, and you can see there's a Gatorade bottle there somewhere. And I mean, what could be that scenario? Maybe somebody was going to use fake blood and they dropped it. You know what I'm saying? In the nervousness or clumsiness of trying to, get it to the Capitol to use it. It seems, why would anybody there be taking fake blood, right? And you can zoom in on that video and you can see that that's not actual blood and that's not Gatorade, okay? So, and people didn't see it. They were kicking it around. I walked past it, looked down and saw it, and I was like, you know what? I better go back and videotape that just in case we need that later on for some reason.
Yeah.
And who knows what happened? I mean, we have found out that Antifa was there. We found out that the feds were undercover there, that they lied to us. It looks like we're going to see some footage maybe next week. Okay. Tucker Carlson has got a hold of 41,000 hours worth of footage from January 6th, and they're looking through it now. So, Katie, if you could put up the story there. So Sunday morning, I'm doing my normal stuff, my normal routine, and I come across this article from the Epoch Times, and I'm reading it, and I said, undercover DC police officer pushed protesters toward the Capitol, climbed over barricade, court filing. And then I was like, undercover DC police officers pushed protesters toward Capitol, climbed over barricade, court filing. And I jumped up, like I got my laptop, I unplugged it, and my wife's getting ready in the bathroom. And I said, hey, what are you doing? And she's in there drying her hair. And then I said, hey, look at this. And then I held up the laptop to her. And I said, look, undercover DC police officers pushed protesters toward Capitol, climbed over barricade, court filing. So I said, see, I told you. I'm not crazy. So anyway, we can take a look at a little bit of this article if you scroll down a little bit. So that's my story. Can we blow that up just a tiny bit? Three undercover Metropolitan Police Department officers joined the march of protesters up the northwest side of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, including one who climbed over a barricade and pushed others toward the Capitol, and another who walked behind Ashley Babbitt and predicted that someone will get shot, according to newly disclosed court documents. New filings by January 6th defendant William Pope of Topeka, Kansas, also show MPD bicycle officers, Metro Police Department, I guess, bicycle officers stopping four armed men in plain clothes on January 6th. The men turned out to be federal agents. Video included the Pope's with Pope's filing also shows uniformed MPD officers saying, we were set up to fail on January 6th. Information in the court papers is likely to rekindle the debate about the role that undercover officers and agents played in the riots of January 6th, and why the U.S. Department of Justice and federal judges have kept the evidence under seal away from the public view. This video clearly evidences undercover law enforcement officers urging the crowd to advance up the stairs and scaffolding toward the Capitol. I'm getting like goosebumps are starting to come out because this is what I've been saying. Urging the crowd to advance up the stairs and scaffolding towards the Capitol on January 6th. Pope wrote in one motion, the government may claim that incidents like this did not happen, but the facts show they did. Since the government cannot be trusted to disclose these facts, it becomes even more important that defense teams, including pro se defendants, be able to directly examine the evidence. Okay, and it goes on. So that's good enough, Katie. I don't know if that's the end or not, but yes, that's what we've been saying. It was. I don't know what to say. I wish now that somebody, me or somebody else, would have went back and challenged these guys. You know, like they did that one guy and said, Fed, this guy's a Fed, you know. I didn't, that wasn't clicking with me at the time. But what was clicking with me is these guys are not like the others. Okay, these guys were dead serious, and they were, I mean, just the volume of their voice. They were like drill sergeants, really. Okay, and I remember them. It was kind of interesting because there was like a little type of a concrete fence area there, and you didn't really need to climb up it. Okay, you could have walked up and got in the yard. So, but these guys were reaching down and pulling people up, saying, "Come on, we got to take this building. Come on," you know, and I went up over the wall like that. That guy who was probably an agent pulled me up over the wall, and the only place we were was in the yard. Okay, we weren't in any secret place. Okay,
right.
So, and then we were there walking around, and then you could walk up underneath the scaffolding. That's where we smelt the pepper spray or whatever they were shooting. So anyway, it feels good to be vindicated. So
yeah. Well, and you know, okay, devil's advocate for a second here. You know, it's always like too little, too late, right? Like we know these things, and then a year later, 2 years later, 10 years later, 9/11, you know, all of a sudden, oh, the kooky conspiracy people were right. Here's all the evidence. Here's all the footage, and it looks like justice. It looks like truth is coming out, but in other cases, the damage has already been done. They got what they wanted out of January 6th. They milked it. They got their bucket of milk. They got what they wanted out of it. Now they can come back with all the evidence and brag about it. Because like what's been done has been done. We can't undo it now. And so it's almost sometimes, is the evidence coming out because justice is being served, or are the very people that perpetrated it letting the information out because now they want the credit for how clever they were? Are they just boasting about what they've done? That's what bugs me.
Yeah. Tom, you have PTSD over this stuff? No, I don't think I did. I'm just getting excited. So it wasn't traumatic. It wasn't really exciting. The one thing I remember about that day is my legs were killing me because we did so much walking. We had to walk far from where we parked our car. We walked all the way down to the Washington Monument. Matter of fact, my stepson was there first time he'd been to DC. So we even went down to the Lincoln Memorial so he could see that. And then we had to all find a restroom, which there was a long line.
Man.
And my legs were just killing me. And then that night, I probably told this before, but I was going to get a hotel on the way back because I had just done a bunch of driving. I just came from Iowa, and then a couple days, and when we got to DC, we got there in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh.
And then we slept for just a few hours and got up, and I was like, okay, I'm stopping on the way home. I'm dead tired. And both of my boys were like, no, we want to go all the way home tonight. And I'm just like, are you kidding me right now?
Oh my gosh.
So I was just like, okay, fine. And I drove all night long. So maybe that's my PTSD. So,
Definitely. Oh my gosh. Oh.
And
yeah.
I got like the last hour and a half was back roads driving. Okay. When you're coming home from DC, the way that we came. And I was like, oh, dude, I know there's going to be deer, because I was, this was the time of night. And I'm not kidding you. 3 times deer ran out right out in front of me.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, Vic, I want to get into the main subject of tonight, but I want to do a recap because last night we talked about the chemical spill, the train that folded up on the tracks up there in East Palestine, Ohio. And I came across a video tonight. I want to get into a little bit of this. Okay.
Okay.
This is Mike Adams. And this is, of course, on InfoWars band.video. So I got the timestamp at 2:26. So we're going to come in on this video and just hear. I tell you what, I really like Mike Adams. Mike Adams has his own lab. He's got all this gazillion-dollar equipment. I don't know, equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars that he uses to examine chemicals. He examines everything, and just to say, hey, is this safe? Is this not? And all kinds of stuff. And he gives, some of the stuff comes back with a good report. But anyway, I've been listening to him for years. When I first started listening to him, he lived in South America. Then he decided to move back to the United States. Okay. He's here in the United States, and I like his stuff. I don't agree 100% with him, but probably 90+%. Anyway, he's saying some things on this. This is what caught my attention. He's talking about the evacuation, kind of what we were talking about last night. So, Katie, if you could play this video, we're just going to jump into it and watch a little bit of it. We might stop it and comment on this, but I'm going to try to get through about 6 minutes or so of it. It could be a little bit more. Then we're going to get into our regular, the thumbnail part of the show. So go ahead, Katie.
Okay, wow. Well, here we go. So the guest is going to be joining us here in just a minute is Eric Coppolino, and he's from planetwaves.fm. He hosts that platform, that network, and he has been covering dioxins, writing about it, and researching it for almost coming up on 40 years. He'll be joining us here in just a minute. I'm gonna tell you something that everybody needs to know right now, including Alex. You got to see this. I've got some overhead cams.
Oh, I'm watching. I'm just going to shut up.
Okay. So vinyl chloride, which I'm pointing at here, vinyl chloride, and for those on the radio, I'm showing a molecule of vinyl chloride. It contains hydrogen, carbon, and chlorine. That's it. Just those 3 elements. Vinyl chloride is what was on the trains. It's considered an industrial waste, but not an insanely toxic waste product. You can deal with vinyl chloride. You can, you can put it into tanker cars and you can deal with it. You can incinerate it somewhere else in a proper hazardous waste facility. That's what was on the trains. When they set fire to it, and I learned this from Eric Coppolino, who's going to be joining us, when they set fire to it, and I've confirmed this, I have EPA documents confirming this, they created this molecule in the fire, which is on the right. This is the most toxic molecule ever created by man. It's 2378 TCDD. It's one dioxin of a class of dioxins. And you'll notice that oxygens are inserted into the center of this molecule. It has the carbons, the hydrogens, and now chlorine on both ends. 4 chlorine atoms, and that creates armor. In essence, a chemical armor where this molecule is practically indestructible like Teflon. This molecule is a disruptor of every system in the human body.
So it doesn't break down like radiation.
It will not break down. It doesn't have a half-life like radiation. It is considered a persistent bioaccumulative toxin. That's called a PBT by the EPA. Persistent means it doesn't go away. Bioaccumulative means that it accumulates up the food chain. It falls on the grass. Grass is eaten by the cows, goes into the cow fat cells. It ends up in the milk, the cheese, the meat, the eggs and so on. And then as a toxin, it interferes with everything. Fertility, it causes cancer, it causes spontaneous abortions, deformities.
Sounds like the shot.
Problems. Exactly, but it's in a way, it's even worse than the shot because this, Alex, this gets unvaccinated people. Think about it. All the unvaccinated people, if you eat, you cannot avoid this if you're dealing with food that suffered the fallout. So just let me repeat, when they set fire to the vinyl chloride, they turned it into a chemical weapons factory that unleashed TCDD. And then they called this a controlled burn, which is a lie. It's not a controlled burn. It was a chemical factory, a chemical bomb on America, an act of ecological terrorism. And let me bring in Eric Coppolino. Mr. Coppolino, thank you for joining me again. I only met you recently. I interviewed him yesterday, and so I invited him on today. He knows what he's talking about. Mr. Coppolino, thank you for joining the show today.
Mike, thank you very much.
What I just said, do you concur with that? Do you have anything to add to that? Did I say anything incorrect from your view? What would you like to say?
Impeccably accurate. Every word, your entire assessment is spot on. If I could add a little bit more to the incident on the train, first of all, there were in fact 5 cars of polyvinyl chloride, 4 cars of PVC pellets, and 5 of vinyl chloride monomer. And they all burned or were burned. And the problem with that is that, among many, many, many problems, is that they were burning in the presence of other fires in cars containing things like wheat and metal and frozen vegetables. And so when other substances burn in the presence of any chlorine fire, this increases the amount of dioxin because you're making the hydrocarbons available as well as the chlorines available. So even a little bit of chlorine in a big any hydrocarbon fire will produce the dioxins. So this is by far, look, this is not really measurable, but I know most of the history of dioxin going back, and I'm going to talk about that history in a moment because I've got a 1956 Monsanto document. But I can't think of a worse dioxin release than this one.
This is, I mean, you and I both are calling for the total evacuation of East Palestine
Yes.
right now. It should happen immediately. And if it does not happen, Eric, what are we looking at in terms of children that are going to be born over the next several years? Because I've read in studies that this will alter pregnancies in a mother 20 years after exposure. What are we looking at in the next 2 years?
Well, even if it's not evacuated, even if it is evacuated, we have a problem because the people have been exposed to so much there. And most of them don't really understand the peril that they're in. They do not really understand the nature of this chemical. But we're looking at multi-generational effects. We're looking at women who cannot have children, and we're looking at spontaneous abortions pretty much in everyone who's pregnant now, and potentially everyone who becomes pregnant. Carol Van Strum, my teacher and document source, who provided me with this document, we spoke to the people of East Palestine last night in a Zoom call, and Carol described a situation in her community which was sprayed with Agent Orange in the 60s and 70s after it was banned in Vietnam, and there has not been a single baby born in this valley for 50 years.
Unreal. I mean, would it be going too far to describe this as a depopulation weapon, or at least a depopulation effect? Whether you think it's intentional or accidental, the effect is depopulation, is it not?
Yeah, it's depopulation, and it's disrupting the biological processes in the lives of many people.
Okay. So guys, that's good, Katie. Band.video, you guys can go watch that whole thing. I tell you, like I said, I like Mike Adams. He's not always right, but I don't believe that he's trying to mislead anybody. I don't get that from him. I believe he's trying to put out good information. He tells what he believes. If he makes a mistake, he admits he made a mistake. Anyway, it seems a little sensational. Maybe it is, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's not far enough. I agree that people need to get out of that town. I don't know where to tell them to go. But I think their lives are at risk. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it's not as bad as what everybody thinks it is. We need people up there to test the soil, to test the air quality, to test the water. We need somebody up there that we can trust, and we can't trust the EPA, I don't think, or the FDA, or whoever. You know, it was the Ohio governor that told him, hey, go on back home. And yeah, I don't think it's good. Not only could this affect, I mean, this is ground zero, but what could go out over hundreds of miles? Maybe still very deadly effects. Okay. So this is where we're at. Keep in mind, last night I mentioned the idea of the Black Awakening, you know, the book by Russ Dizdar. And this is one of the things that, you know, that they would like to do. Okay. Put poison in the water, poison in the air, shut down the grid. Okay. The electrical grid, and cause complete chaos. This is just one event. It looks like it happened from negligence. That's what it looks like. I don't know that we have any proof that anybody done this on purpose. Okay. Yes, there's a movie. Yes, they were trying to get people to sign up for these bracelets. I don't believe in coincidence, but we also talked about the devil is in the details. Okay. Anyway, guys, if you missed last night's show, we talked about that last night. I saw just that little blurb there, and I wanted to share at least that much. Kind of long. I hate doing super long, you know, videos during the show, but I want to get the information out, and we need to pray for these people. We need to see what we can do to help these people. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where they don't need clean water. So anyway, Vic, comments on that before we shift gears here?
It is just so diabolical. If it is all planned out, it's just absolutely diabolical. And when you think of the brain power and the, like, Tom, when I worked in the corporate world, we would sit around in boardrooms for hours, for weeks, planning just one silly thing, like what should we change the color of our intranet site banner to, you know? And when you think of the manpower and the brain power and the money and the infrastructure and the organization and the leadership it would take to put all of those dots in place with the IDs and with the predictive programming and with knowing the exact chemical that would have to be set on fire. If it is planned out, it's absolutely diabolical. And I mean, I'm just still trying to get my mind around what I just saw. I mean, this is the mind of the enemy. I don't know if he's involved in every aspect of this, if there's, you know, some coincidences involved or there's some, I don't know, but so, it's diabolical.
Yeah. Let me mention this real quick. I'm not a doctor, scientist, or anything like this, but I'm going to give you my layman's take on cancer, on diseases, on sickness. Okay. My dad was a smoker, and he basically died from lung cancer. Okay. From the treatment of lung cancer. He probably started smoking around the time he was 12. Now, that being said, there are people that smoke their whole life and live to be 100 years old. My dad had a horrible diet. Okay. He, I mean, I don't know how much sugar he ate a day or a week, but he would drink coffee and pour the sugar in.
Oh.
Okay. Cancer thrives on sugar. So what if my dad had an anti-cancer diet? He might still be here today. I'm not saying it's okay to smoke. It's very bad for you. Okay. It causes all kinds of problems besides cancer, but we know that it's directly, you know, connected to cancer. And the same thing could go for anybody. You know, there could be people that are much more vulnerable to what's in the air up there. How does it work? I don't know. Look at Flint, Michigan, you know, and the contaminated water up there. I think that every single person is different. Their DNA is completely different. Okay, and how their body reacts to good foods and bad foods and chemicals and all that stuff is different. So that's my layman's take. You do your own research. I just mentioned that because I don't want to spread fear. I don't want people just to be afraid to breathe the air.
Mhm.
If we knew what was in our water, probably in your average American neighborhood, you would probably not drink it. Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that for years, and my neighbor told me years ago that they had the water tested in our neighborhood, and the guy that tested is like, "Man, you shouldn't be drinking this water." So there's all kinds of poisons everywhere. There's no food that's good for you. There's no real food anymore. We don't eat food. We eat food-like products. So,
Yeah.
and I could go on and on about microwaves and Teflon and all these things. They're bad for us. I try to eliminate things that are unhealthy when I can. I have some things in my life that are easier than others. So anyway,
Yeah.
I think it's important to to take care of our health. I have a conviction about certain things and certain things I don't. I'm trying to be in better physical shape now because I'm entering my 50s, and in 10 years, I want to. I don't want to be as tore up as I see some other people are. Okay, I'm just trying to think ahead of if I'm stronger now, if I have stronger back, I can hold myself up better, right? So anyway, Vic.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of thinking along the same lines where, the verse in Matthew where it says, "Don't worry about what to eat or drink or wear." And, I've always thought of that in terms of if you lose your job or, you're impoverished, or like he's going to feed you and, don't worry about it. But now that we live in the world that we live in, and I don't think it's really any different than it's always been. We've just gotten more sophisticated and have more ways of doing it and more technology. But I think part of that verse might be, hey, the food and water that's available to you is going to be compromised and poisoned, and there is going to be nefarious people out there using food and drink as weapons. And so part of our being commanded not to worry about what we eat and drink isn't simply lack of it, but that the food and the drink that is available to us, God is going to prolong our lives to fulfill the will and the calling he has on our lives. We don't have to worry. Now, this doesn't mean we don't care. It doesn't mean we go to East Palestine and say, "Hey, don't worry about it, man. You move back into your houses." Like, I'm not saying some sort of name it and claim it, Deus ex machina that gets put down on the stage and everybody's, problems go away. But what I am saying is part of the command of that verse, I think, is a comfort to believers that our life is in his hands and that we shouldn't be so anxious over the food and drink that we are terrified to nourish ourselves.
Yes, agree. Not only can it be poisoned, but can also be cursed.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and I think for me, that's one of the reasons I pray over food that somebody gives me, like if I go to a restaurant,
Yeah.
So I've heard stories of that before. But anyway, a lot more could be said on all these things. But I want to read to you out of 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. I wasn't going to read this, but you know what? We just are. It's just kind of obvious. I don't like doing the obvious thing all the time. So be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Vic, I was just talking a minute ago about when I went to Colorado and I went to that meeting at the YMCA of the Rockies. And how many kids were there? I can't remember if it was 200 or 2,000. I think it was like 2,000 kids. Yeah. In this room, it was. And when I saw all these kids praising God and living for God, I didn't feel so alone. And this verse stuck with me for years because even though I was going back to Mansfield, okay, I would think about this. You know, your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of sufferings. I knew I wasn't alone, okay? And this verse was a comfort to me. We have an enemy that is prowling around ready to attack us. Those attacks come in many different forms, okay? Now, let me throw this out there at the beginning. I don't believe that every bad thing that happens to us is an attack from the enemy. Some of it is because of our bad decisions, okay? Some of it's because it's somebody else done something, or it can be just the rules of physics, the laws of physics, or the laws of nature. Things happen. We live in a fallen world, okay? So not everything is the devil, but some things are. We need to have discernment. I always say, and of course, we kind of learned this from L.A. Marzulli, rebuke first and ask questions later. What if it is the devil? We're going to kick him out anyway, what's the famous quote? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world that he doesn't exist. He would love to attack you and then make you think that he doesn't even exist. Russ Dizdar used to say, the devil loves to hit you up and blame it on God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about attacks, spiritual attacks tonight, and some of those things. But before I go on too much further, I want to give you a chance to jump in here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that we're talking about this because I'm really glad that you made that specification too, because, like, for example, if you never, ever change the oil in your car and all of a sudden one day it stops running and then it's like, it's the devil. I'm going to lay hands
on the devil blew up my car.
You can Jesus' name. Like, I don't mean to mock, but I guess, I don't know, Tom, there's like, here's a double-edged sword here for me. I recently had someone tell me like, Vicky, this is spiritual warfare. I'm like, shut up. This is nothing. This is like a fly buzzing in my face. This is like an irritation. She's like, especially with our particular audience, Tom, I know that people that have gone through extreme trauma or who have gone through SRA, there's a point where when you live that level of trauma, there you can experience spiritual warfare and never attribute it to spiritual warfare, because in comparison, it's like just doesn't even add up to the things up here. So we can get that side of it too. So there's a lot of times where the enemy can get away with stuff in our lives because we're not praying against it, because we're thinking like, oh, this is just, hey, we live in a world of entropy and things break down and cars break down and friends don't want to hang around with you anymore and people leave. And like part of that's just the nature of life. And so we tend to not take it as spiritual warfare, but I would not have the physical or mental capacity to live in the framework that the enemy's out to get me every second, and therefore every single thing that's happening to me is somehow him. I'm not going to be on his puppet strings. I mean, I know that he hates us and he's out to get us, but I think that I would probably snap and end up with a mental disorder if every single thing that happened to me, I had to hyperanalyze it through those lenses and think that the enemy was always on my heels and every single thing in my life that was happening was somehow him controlling it. Like, God is sovereign in my life. And if I'm going to be on anyone's puppet strings, it's going to be on God's, not the devil's.
Amen. Amen. So Vic, the line of work that we do, obviously there's a target, right?
Yeah.
Let me read this. It says, sometimes the devil doesn't need to lift a finger. We do a great job of sabotaging our own lives. Yes.
Yeah, got that right.
You know what? I'll be the first to admit that I'm on my own worst enemy. And I can say that about several people that I know. They're their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
So anyway, what the heck was I just saying? I read that quote.
Our line of work, our ministry.
Yeah, in our line of work. Thank you, Vic. We have targets, right?
Yeah.
Russ Dizdar used to say there's hell to pay for what we're doing. we're making movies, we're writing books, and there's a price to pay for doing that. We know we signed up for it. Okay. I'm glad I'm stronger than I used to be, because if I was the person I was 20 years ago, I would be crushed under the weight of this oppression and these attacks. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jesus said to Peter, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I prayed for you that your faith would not fail. And when you turn back, strengthen your brothers. Man, that's spiritual warfare. The devil asked to sift him as wheat.
Yeah.
There are examples in the Bible of Satan going to God. Think of Job, think of the accuser in Revelation, right? The accuser of the brethren. So we know we have an enemy. The Bible tells us here in 1 Peter chapter 5, we have an enemy that will attack us. I think it's important to know, to have discernment, to know when it's him and when it's not.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes we're just saying, hey, we're going to rebuke the devil anyway, just in case it is him.
Yeah.
Now, let me also say this. The devil has a way of hitting you, okay, upside the head. All right. Is that good English? Hitting you upside the head. And then you don't even know it was him that hit you. Okay.
Yeah.
It's happened to me. And we talked about piggybacking a few weeks ago. Guys, if you are new to this show, I want you to go back and watch that. Piggybacking, and that's something that's real, where the enemy can come off of something that somebody else said, okay? Tonight we'll talk a little bit about sleep paralysis. Vic, you wrote the book on it, okay? The enemy is looking for an opportunity, okay? Sometimes he doesn't need to lift a finger, just like the commenter said, okay? We can do a lot of damage on our own.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
but when he does attack, we can use the authority of Christ. We can use the word of God. We can praise God, lift up, the name of Jesus, and we can expel the enemy. So, Vic, go ahead.
So I just think, if we obey the Bible verse that says to take every thought captive, every thought, that means 100%. If we're taking every thought captive, we're operating on a grid of obedience, and we don't have to even evaluate or conclude or divide rightly or wrongly where that thought came from, whether it's us, whether it's the enemy, whether it's something demonic. It doesn't even matter. If we're taking every thought captive, we don't have to evaluate the origin of the thought. We're just going to operate in that grid of obedience because we were called to it. And that way, when we're taking every thought captive, not only are we, it's a lint trap that's catching all this garbage, but then we're walking in obedience all day, which is another protective force field around us. It's an added layer of protection.
Yes. And as well as I know that verse, and as much as I preach that verse, there are times in my life where I don't follow the advice of that verse. I'm just going to be honest with you.
I know.
And you know what, folks? We're not going to be perfect until we get to heaven, until we're in our, our perfect bodies. But that's spiritual warfare, and the enemy is always coming up with a new trick.
Yeah.
Shame on us. And shame on me, because there were times in my life where I repeated the same cycle for years. And I've said this before, the devil's just like, man, I cannot believe this moron falls for this every time. He makes it so easy for me. And I've been there. I have been there. Shame on me. But when I got the training, okay, and when I learned how to win more than I lose, okay, things changed. Yeah. And we should be winning more than we're losing. So again, the enemy has the ability to attack us. He has the ability to tempt us. Okay. I don't understand how he gets access sometimes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because Vic, there have been times in my life when my armor's been up, the authority, has been, used, and somehow the enemy got access. And I'm examining my life. I'm like, Lord, is there anything in my life? Did I have an open door? What happened? Okay. I believe these are the siftings. Okay.
Yeah.
These are the Job's situations. And these are attacks from the enemy. Again, going back to Peter, it says, be self-controlled and alert. Okay. So that's the defense, right? Be alert, be self-controlled. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour, looking for somebody that's not self-controlled, looking for somebody that's not alert. Okay. So, and I'm not trying to change scripture here, but I think this is what it's saying. And he's looking for a victim that's not paying attention that he can devour. Guys, I got my hand up. If you can see it, there's a green screen. I'm guilty. And if we were all in a room right now, all 53 of us, and we were being honest, we could probably all raise our hand and say guilty. Yep. Okay. But don't allow this pattern to go over and over and over in your life. Okay. That's a stronghold. Okay. That's a stronghold. That can be what's called an attachment. Okay. But a stronghold is something that you can't break free of, like a fleshly thing. I'm not saying be perfect. I'm saying don't let the devil kick your butt all day and night. Now, I want to mention something. Okay. And Vic, there are a lot of examples that we could give. So this message came in. Okay. So this is kind of a, one of these issues that's kind of like, how do you talk about this? Okay. It's kind of awkward, but you know what? I think we need to get over this awkward thing because there are people that need to hear this. Okay. And if it's not you, it's going to be somebody that you know. All right. And these kind of attacks happen. I can't explain them. Okay. But somebody wrote in and they, they said, hey, this is a little bit embarrassing, but after I overcame this in my life, and they were talking about pornography, I had sexual attacks in my sleep. And I had what's called nocturnal emissions. Okay. Some people call them wet dreams. And they're like, why is this happening to me? Well, there can be a couple different reasons that it's happening to you. Okay. One, it can be your body is, it can be a physiological thing. Okay. That can be part of it. All right. And again, I think this is part of the sifting where somehow the enemy is getting access and he's trying to pull you back in to that old lifestyle. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I mentioned this is just not one email. I've heard this. Okay. I have been talking to people for a while and they have been saying, hey, and it's always the same scenario. When they had a sexual victory, overcoming a sexual sin, this scenario happens. Okay. So this is an example of some type of supernatural satanic attack. That's what I think. Vic, have you heard of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have always attributed it in part to we're called to be sober-minded and vigilant. And I think that we're now finally to an era where we're starting to realize how much jurisdiction the enemy has over the dream world and the altered states of consciousness, and how some dreams it is just a normal defragging of the brain. And sometimes it's more, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two. And so I think that we need to, as a body of believers, apply that scripture to be sober-minded and vigilant to our asleep hours as well. I think most of us go to bed completely unarmored up because we think, well, we're going to bed now, so the lights are going out all over the spiritual realm too, right? We're, they're gonna attack me tomorrow when I get up, but they don't rest, and they're also bullies. They get us when we're vulnerable, when we're weak, when we're tired, when we're stressed out, when we're broken, when we're in grief, when we're worn out, when we are struggling with a temptation, or we're trying to level up in our faith and we're discouraged. That's when they're going to kick us even harder because we're down. And so I think it is really important not to work ourselves up into a frenzy where we're praying so many spiritual warfare prayers before we go to bed that we're actually going to bed stressed out and worried about it, and then probably attracting the possibility of it to happen. But I do think that we need to learn how to be sober-minded and vigilant when we are asleep as well as when we're awake.
Yes, agreed. And I think we need to armor up when we go to bed by praying,
Yep.
I pray for my family every night. Lord, watch over us as we're sleeping, because our defenses are shut down, right?
Yep.
So we are unconscious, we're not aware, and we're more vulnerable when we're sleeping than any other time. So guys, let me reiterate this. We cannot be afraid to talk about this subject. Okay, the church has dropped the ball when it's come to talking about sex. We don't want to get gross or anything like that. Okay, but we can't be afraid of this issue because people are looking for answers, and the church, because they're afraid of talking about the blood and guts, okay, or just the things that are a little bit risque. We're by no means, we're not trying to get pornographic or anything like that. That's not what we're doing here, but we don't want to be afraid of these subjects. So Vic, let me ask you this. The enemy has the ability to cause us to feel paralyzed when we're sleeping. Okay, so there is a spiritual force that has a physical presence and a physical effect on us. So that's a scary thing. But what about these things that are commonly called wet dreams? That would not be considered a scary thing. Okay, that could be considered a more pleasurable thing, obviously.
Yep.
And think about the idea of temptation. Think about the stories that we hear, okay, and 99% men that are overcoming pornography, they're getting victory in this part of their life. And then all of a sudden, they have what seems like some kind of a failing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like what just happened? I didn't do that. And it's just kind of like it's a shock to them. And this, I believe, okay, can be a spiritual attack. So again, I just want to make sure people understand what we're saying. And I think you could even say that when something like this happens, it's kind of like a victory. Okay. This is whether it's something physiologically happening, okay, that's your body's releasing something. But I lean more towards this is a spiritual attack. Okay. And if the enemy has the ability to put thoughts in your head, if he has the ability, okay, to paralyze you and kind of hold you down, then he can do this as well. All right. And Vic, of course, there are sleep paralysis stories of people that, as far as we know, have not opened up doors, right? So anyway.
So, when we talk about these kind of topics, it's easy to just default to assuming that the only audience that we're really talking about are men. But there's another group of people that are being equally, if not more, attacked in this particular arena, and that is children. Very, very young children. So, Tom, you're getting the letters from the guys. I'm getting the letters from men and women who talk about as early as 3 years old, many of them, between 3 and 7. And we know in the realms that we work in that trauma before the age of 3 and before the age of 8 are crucial times to get kids to disassociate and to get the mind controlling in. I have talked to many people who between the ages of 3 and 7, right in that window, have been attacked with sleep paralysis. So obviously 3, 4, 5-year-olds aren't opening doors. They're not looking at pornography. They don't know what sex is, but they're having early sexual awakenings because they are experiencing these things in dreams. And it doesn't start out that way at 3 years old. At 3 years old, what they're telling me is it just starts out with touching and learning how to touch themselves. They'll have these experiences and they'll wake up masturbating, which is something they'd never heard of before, weren't aware of their bodies. They're being groomed. And I always try to tell people, like, we can have our Christian bubbles. We can homeschool our kids. We can boycott Disney and Netflix. We can not give our kid a cell phone until they're 18. We can do all these things. And I'm not mocking those things or saying you shouldn't do those things. But what I'm saying is the enemy has other ways to get into your kid's head. They might bypass your front door and your living room television set, but they have ways to get in. And Tom, I've heard so many stories firsthand of people writing to me and calling and wanting to talk to me on the phone. And this started between 3 and 7 years old. And I always ask the people, because I'm curious, did you know as this was unfolding, as you got older and through puberty, as it got more explicit, did you have an understanding that this was wrong or bad? Or, obviously I don't expect kids to understand the consequential, destruction that those sorts of bondages, lead to. But I've got a very interesting answer from one guy, Tom. He said, I never knew that it was bad or dirty, but I knew it was a secret. And so these entities are acting the very same way a human groomer would act. This is something special between you and I. Don't tell your mom and dad. And a lot of the things that we hear in the SRA world, the kind of grooming that happens, not just sexually, but the trauma and the spiritual grooming and the mind control, all of this, Tom, can effectively be done in the astral realm. You don't even have to have your hands on that child. They don't have to show up at your occult infiltrated, daycare center. They don't have to be in a generational satanic home. They can appear to your kid hundreds and hundreds of times between the age of 3 and 18. And your little homeschooled kid goes off to college and comes back and says, I'm going to be of this particular sexual persuasion. And it looks so abrupt to the parent. It looks so abrupt that the college did this. But in some cases, Tom, I'm talking to these people. It was an 18-year grooming process that was going on at night while they were asleep. So it's not just the men here. This is also happening to our kids. And what we're starting to see now in the public schools, it is an extremely overt agenda that they have covertly been carrying on during sleep for decades. I don't know statistically how many kids this is happening to, Tom, but now that the book is out there and the topic is getting talked about, I can't even tell you how many letters I've gotten.
So Vic, 3 things, and I want to mention these real quick because I'm afraid I'm going to forget them. Okay, Katie's got one of them starred, but thank you, Mary. This is great advice. Listen to audio Bible on headphones to sleep. It broke her sleep issues. That's great advice. Yes, listen to Christian music. Okay, put Christian music on headphones. For me, and this kind of answers the next question. How do you learn to be vigilant while you're asleep? It just takes experience, practice. I wake up and my default is I start praying. How many times do I wake up in the middle of the night and I just begin to pray because it's quiet and I'm like, what am I going to do? Just lay awake? You know what I'm saying? And just do nothing? No, I want to use this time to talk to God. My day is filled with just busyness and all of this noise, and it's quiet at night. So I have just trained myself. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm going to pray, and I pray myself back to sleep. Sometimes I don't get much prayer out and I fall right back to sleep. But I'm just, this is the way I've done it. I don't always do it this way, but I'll make mental notes of prayer requests, and I know that I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night and pray for those things.
Yep.
Okay. When my head's not so clouded. Okay.
Yep.
But again, I want to go back. This needs to be said twice. Listen to audio Bible on headphones to sleep. This helped Mary with her sleep issues. That's great advice. Okay. Christian music, praise music, worshiping God. Somebody else said, I listen to the Psalms at night. That's great. All of these things are weapons in our war. Okay. These are weapons of warfare. So Vic, what you just said made me look at an incident in my house that happened in my house in a different way. Many of you guys know the story. I told the story. Years ago, we bought a box spring from a garage sale. We brought it home. My son, he's 16 now. He was all excited to sleep in a big boy bed. And we got it set up in his room. And we put him to bed in there that night. And he woke up in the middle of the night afraid. Mm-hmm. And I was a typical guy, of course. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, I'll deal with this in the morning. Like, what's going on? Don't bother me. I'm sleeping. This was like, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, 14 years ago. But anyway, I talked to my son, who was at the time like less than 2 years old, I'm pretty sure. And I said, hey, bud, what happened? Why don't you want to sleep in your bed? And he said, scary hands are tickling me. Mm. So I always associated it with that box spring. I prayed over it, and that incident led me into a prayer relationship with my son that has not stopped to this day. He's 16 years old, and we still say a prayer together every night. We did tonight. Okay. So what the enemy meant for attack, okay, we turned it into a bonding thing, right? Yeah. And I pray over him. I pray for him, and we pray for our sleep. And I pray that he would have a good rest. And I pray for my family. Okay. So we very innocently bought that at a garage sale. Didn't think much of it. We already had the mattress. We just needed the box spring. Okay. So and once I figured that out, I mean, I don't know if that's where it came from. Okay. But those two events happened on the same day. I prayed over it, and I said, Lord, if there's anything attached to this, if anything happened to this bed in the past, if any kid was abusing this, I ask God that you would kick out the demonic, break this curse, and, clean my house, spiritually speaking. And so anyway, but what happened was my son wouldn't sleep in that bed for years because it traumatized him. Wow. And he went to sleep in the bunk bed in his sister's room. And then he got over it. Okay. And he went back, and he doesn't have any issues now. And I've trained him to deal with these things. But think about that. I mean, he said he had no frame of reference where he could have seen this somewhere. Okay. He didn't see movies like this. Yep. Okay, we didn't have it in our house, but he said scary hands were tickling him. And it really frightened him. So anyway, I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying. And if it would have went unchecked, who knows what it could have led to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple comments I'll add there. For listening to stuff as you're going to sleep, especially if you're going to listen with earbuds in, be very discerning. If you're listening to Christian meditation apps, there could be wittingly or unwittingly to the people making them, because it has to do with frequency, there could be hidden binaural beats in there where they play a little tritone that syncs the frequency of your left and right brain, which God created them at different frequencies for a reason. that can trip altered states of consciousness. And so be very careful with the light playing music, and because there could be binaural beats. Binaural beats primarily only work if you're wearing earbuds, though. If it's sitting on your nightstand or something, the brain is probably not going to register those tritones. But just be discerning. And I'm not saying that these Christian companies that are putting these things out are nefariously doing this on purpose. It has to do with the frequency of music now and these tritones being hidden in it. And it's not something that you pick up audibly and in our range. So just be discerning with the ones that are playing music with the stuff over it. So just a little word of warning there. If you're listening to some of this stuff and you're still experiencing it, you might want to just change to an audio Bible with no music or something to that effect. So with that said, with the how do you train yourself to be sober-minded and vigilant while you're asleep? This takes work that you do when you're awake, and it takes praying certain things before you go to bed. And I always I tell people Song of Solomon 5:2, the bride was asleep, but her heart was awake. And so there are these times when we are asleep, but we are very alert. Her heart was awake. She heard the bridegroom knocking. Now, she didn't want to get up. She didn't want to bother herself, but she was awake enough with her heart that she knew there was spiritual activity going on at the door. Now, obviously, Song of Solomon is a two-layered book. It's Solomon and a bride, but it's also this allegory of the bride and the bridegroom with Christ. And so there are these periods when we're asleep where our heart is alert and we hear the voice of the bridegroom. And so I always pray before I go to bed that if there's anything that I need to be alert for, speak to me in that dream, or intercede for me in that dream, or wake me up. And I can't even tell you, Tom, how many times like I've been abruptly woken up in the middle of something like this. Or I had another experience very recently where I think that I was pulled up into the astral and I had no idea. I was asleep. I was dreaming. I wasn't lucid. And when I was in this particular point in the dream, I heard in my head, this is real. Do not do this. Because they wanted me to like say something. They wanted me to like make these vows. And this is real. Do not make those vows. Basically get out of here. And instantly I became vigilant in my dream and started doing warfare. Another thing that I pray is we typically forget a lot of our dreams, but we remember the ones where we wake up. When we wake up right after a dream, right after an REM cycle, we tend to remember snippets or most of that dream. But the average person has 5 dreams a night if you're getting like a good solid 8, right? And typically you'll forget the first 4, but you'll remember the last one upon waking because you're right at the tail end of that REM cycle. So another thing that I pray that's been very effective, but it does affect your sleep, is I pray and I say, Father, if there's any warfare I need to do, immediately wake me up in the middle or at the tail end of that dream so I can immediately do the warfare. And there are nights where I will wake up 3-4 times a night and I will remember that dream and there'll be something weird about it. The things that I look for is, are there people in my dreams that are offering me food or something I have to drink? I'm really cautious of those sorts of things. I'm always cautious when a celebrity shows up in my dream because I could care less about any of them. And when celebrities show up in my dream, I tend to think it could be a familiar spirit because it's this human being that I would otherwise never brush shoulders with in real life. And in the dream, you do have the sense of like, oh, I'm in the presence of someone famous. And I'm always leery when someone famous shows up in my dream, especially when it's someone who I could care less about in real life. Like it's not someone I follow. So it's just one of those things where the more you have these types of dreams and the more you catch wind of these things that are showing up in your dreams that just seem a little bit off, and the more that you pray and the more that you are actively requesting that Jesus take part in your nocturnal affairs along with you. It's like anything, Tom. It's like the guys that show up in the military the first day of boot camp, they don't know anything. But by the time they're done with boot camp, all of a sudden they have this skill set they never had before. And it's the same thing with spiritual warfare, as you all know. It's one of those things that once you become aware of the fact that when I sleep, I need to be doing warfare, you do go through a boot camp. The spirit starts speaking to you, and you'll start getting woke up, or you'll start having lucid moments in your dream, or there's been times when I've been asleep and Bible verses pop into my mind, and there's definitely a feeling of, because we know that he never leaves us or forsakes us, it also means that he's with us, that when we sleep, that's another place where he's with us. He doesn't ever leave us or forsake us. And so just becoming aware of the fact that Jesus is there with us when we sleep, and he's there to protect us and guide us, even like navigate through those dream experiences.
Yes. Wow, lots of good stuff happening in the chat. Earlier this evening, Vic, I was talking to a friend that I hadn't talked to in a long time. Somebody that I knew, that I met like 35 years ago at Christian camp.
Mm-hmm.
And this person has kind of been watching, from afar, like they know what we do it through the black, or they have an idea, but not 100% sure. And they sent me a message like, hey, could you give me a call? So I was finally able to get around to give them a call tonight. And they're like, hey, what is it that you do? And I was like, okay, well, how do I condense that down? And I just kind of explained to them about Freedom Encounters and say, we try to help people, and we try to get the information out. And this person was kind of like, I've been just kind of noticing about how behind the times the church is, and how they are kind of opening the doors to some occult things, and they're not aware that they're doing that. And I said, yeah, the church should be cutting edge, but it's about 30 years behind on some of these things. Yeah. And that's why we do what we do. And when I say we, I think of Vicky, you, me, Katie, all of us at Through the Black, Pastor Sean, Colleen, and then also the listeners, because I'm watching these comments, and I mean, they're just golden, right? These guys, you guys know what's going on. And, I'm learning from you as I'm reading this. You're learning from us. And we're sharpening, it's iron sharpening iron. I love this. This sounds a little bit new agey, but it's not. Okay. I used to work at a store called Best Buy, and they had a thing called the virtuous teaching cycle. So it was basically just, hey, train everybody, like tell everybody what you know. Okay. That way everybody is trained, the same way. And, just in case somebody misses something, and be open to it, like some people kind of put up this defense and they're unteachable, right? And they're like, you can't tell me anything. I don't ever want to be that way. I think I can learn from anybody. And I learned tons from my 16-year-old son, and kid is smart from my daughters, from all my kids, right? So, iron sharpens iron. We can learn a lot, and I see that happening on this show. And I think that's the cool thing about when we go live and the chats going on. I can almost like see the gears turning. You know what I'm saying? It's like fireworks are going off, and it's happening for me here, because I'm just like, oh, Vic, you and we figure things out in real time, and we kind of talk them out sometimes. Like, oh, I don't know if this is legit, but this is what I'm thinking about this. So anyway, guys, these are just a couple examples of the types of attacks that you can have. We could go on and on and on. But we got this email in, and I'm like, man, how do we answer this? You know? And I'm like, let's just go straight for it. Okay, let's go straight for it. And I want to encourage the listeners to do the same thing. Don't be afraid to talk about sex, about sexual sin, okay? Because people are looking for answers, and if the church turns them away, who are they going to go to? Okay, who's going to answer these questions for them? We have a world, okay, that worships sex, okay, in the wrong way. They don't even know the creator, okay, of this, and they're standing by ready to give an answer, and it's not going to be truth. Okay. Right. So let's do the best we can. We live in an information age where there's lots of really good information. I used to have a serious struggle with sexual sin. And by God's grace, I learned how to fight. I learned how to overcome it. And I learned how to get the victory. And it, I thought at one point, like, 20 years ago, I thought I'm never going to beat this. This is always going to get the best of me, but it's not true. It's not true. You can have victory over this, and you don't have to let it just destroy your life or have a grip. It's a stronghold, and you can break that stronghold. I love talking to people about that. Just because of the victory, okay, in my own life. So we can't be afraid to talk about this, okay? There is freedom in Christ. There's not perfection, okay, in our flesh, all right? Now, I believe in the second work of grace, the ongoing sanctification process, okay? But I don't believe we can be sinless on this earth, okay?
Right.
So, Vic?
Yeah, it's so distressing how the enemy has so thoroughly destroyed sex. And when we talk about perversion, we tend to go straight to pornography, masturbation, fornication, and alternative lifestyles, right? My YouTube version of saying that. But there's something going on now with this new generation. And it is very young people claiming to be asexual. I don't want any part of this. It's too complicated. It's too hurtful. In some cases, it might be trauma. It might be sexual abuse. It might just be all the fears that go along with growing up in puberty and the fear of the unknown, whatever. But I always like to say that the hidden sexual perversion are the people that God created to enjoy sex in the right context, who have written it off, aren't desirous of it at all, don't want it. And I'm thinking of a lot of married women who are married and there's no fulfillment, there's no enjoyment, there's no desire. And there's a million reasons behind that. There's a lot of abuse in the world and trauma and healing and brokenness, and I get that. But I just really want to include, because it never gets included, that if Satan has completely destroyed that's something that God created. If Satan has completely destroyed sex for you, then sex has also been perverted, because God did create it in the right time and the right environment. If you're in a marriage, and so I don't want to leave those people out, Tom, because I think that there's a lot of people who are married and are in situations where that should be fulfilling and enjoyable, and it's been destroyed because of sin and because of the devil. And that is also something that we should fight earnestly. Not just, I got a porn addiction, but what about the people that have learned to despise and hate it? That is also a perversion of what God meant for it as well. And so I just don't want to leave those people out, because I think that that's prevalent, and that's another thing that nobody ever wants to talk about. That's the kind of thing that women joke about. It's always guised in humor or sarcasm, but why is that? And that is something that the enemy, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so if he has destroyed that for you, claim it back.
Vic, I have had to talk to so many married couples over the past 5 years about this issue and just struggling with sex issues. And I tell you what, I've seeked out, the information. Like there's a ton of books, there's a ton of good information out there. And I was looking for just what did Christians have to offer when it came to overcoming sexual addiction or pornography and things like that. And the biggest thing I found was accountability. Accountability is great. Accountability is really important. Okay. But deliverance and breaking strongholds, I believe, is where we need to start. And then we add accountability to these things because we don't want to, go back and, you know what I'm saying? Go back into these areas. Okay. We're drawn to these things that are dark and we're drawn to sin. We have a default position. I think what you just said about marriage and about women is so important. And it's I don't know how to it's something that needs to be talked about, but I think there's so many other people that do it better than what we can. They're out there. And then maybe what we might do one night is make a list and talk about them and show some clips or something like that.
Sure.
Because there's people out there that are experts at this, okay? And they're the people that I learn from. I just pass this information on, okay? But if you're in a marriage and there are intimacy problems, then you need to solve them. You need to fix it, okay? For many different reasons. Sex is not just about, if I can be kind of crass, it's not just about getting off, okay? It's about intimacy and it's about a connection between two people, all right? It's more than just the physical gratification or pleasure. So, but couples don't know how to communicate when it comes to sex because the church has dropped the ball. Maybe your parents have dropped the ball, okay, in teaching and talking about this. The world has perverted it. So there's 99% bad information or no information and no good information, okay? The good information is few and far between and hard to find. So maybe we should compile sometime like just kind of like some clips of some things out there that would be helpful or, of some different people. So anyway, something to think about, guys. We are kind of brainstorming in real time here at Through the Black. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I say this every night. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the financial support. Thank you for the prayer. Thank you guys for sharing the videos. Guys, don't forget about the conference. It's coming up March 31st, April 1st. Out of the Darkness, okay? We're going to be talking about this. It's going to be Pastor Mike Spalding. It's going to be Sherry Clausen, Vicki Joy Anderson, author of They Only Come Out at Night. Colleen James, author of The Lie Effect, is going to be there. Also, Coach Dave Daubenmire, Gregory Reed. I'm going to be there. Others are going to be there. The Shatter Ops team is going to be there. I talked to the Shatter Ops team today, and they're fired up and ready to go. Kenny C will be there, okay? Excuse me. It's going to be in Brookville, Ohio at the Harvest Revival Center. So there's going to be opportunities to meet up that day, okay, earlier in the day, and then also the night before. So anyway, guys, throughtheblack.com is the website where you can get the tickets. And come on out to the Out of the Darkness Spiritual Warfare Conference. First Through the Black conference. We can't wait to see you guys out there. Vic, final word on Satanic Attacks tonight.
Oh man, I just want to encourage everybody. Don't be overwhelmed by this. As soon as you click off, say a quick cleansing prayer, because the enemy's going to come in and say that's overwhelming. Just shake all this off. Just know that we've got him fighting for us. So don't let this overwhelm you. Don't let it discourage you, distress you, depress you, scare you. Just cleanse it. This is for your encouragement. We are more than conquerors.
Amen. Amen, guys. Hey, we will see you tomorrow night. We got a guest coming up, a returning guest. And Wednesday night, don't miss it. It's going to be a great show. All right, bye.